Have you ever had the experience of playing a video game, going through the motions and proceeding through the levels, half paying attention to the story, unengaged by everything that isn't just the gameplay, until something happens? It could be a character dying, it could be a shift in tone or a twist, or, in this case, seeing the true face of what you were fighting. And that twisted, disturbed feeling that ran down your spine when you finally decided to take a closer look. Ultrakill is a fast-paced movement shooter styled after Devil May Cry and Quake, and it is one of the most unhinged, fun, silly, and depressing games I've played in recent times. I quite frankly don't think I really need to introduce this game simply because of how prevalent it is in internet culture, and the fact that one of an Ultrakill's fans' biggest hobbies is looking for videos saying that the game that they know damn well is one of the best to ever do it, is one of the best to ever do it. But the question remains how a game like this could be disturbing. In Ultrakill, you're put in the shoes of one of the most powerful beings in its universe, someone that can tear down mountain-sized monsters, wipe out entire armies in minutes, when one of the biggest elements in horror is an element of helplessness. Aside from that, well, if you asked me, it would be by placing the bulk of the story's horror weight not on the blatantly overpowered protagonist, but rather on the wider scale of the world itself. Sure, you're this invincible god of death, but that doesn't mean that those around you are so lucky. The high-quality gameplay of Ultrakill is just one part of it, because while you go through the tried-and-true FPS setting of hell, there are hints and hooks that suggest a much greater narrative at play. At least the ones that don't involve a direct cutscene at the end of each act, one that you could easily miss the full scope of if you're not paying attention to the environment or looking at the lore entries in the terminals. For example, there's the Lust Layer's expansive neon cities built as a sanctuary to escape Hell's punishments, at least until Heaven tore it down. There's the Wrath Layer's rendition of the River Styx, having flooded ever since the extinction of humanity, jam-packed with so many souls that it earned its new name, the Ocean Styx, this complemented by the many ferrymen, whose boats evolved from a simple canoe into a massive modern cruise ship. It's all of this inventive and creative level and enemy design that really acts as a very subtle but very effective hook for players not paying attention to try to lure them into wanting to learn more about the world that they found themselves in. And whenever you do decide to start learning about this world, you'll discover that the story of Ultrakill is at its core a tragedy. So much bad stuff has happened in this universe that the main plot of the game is that you're quite literally in a race to the bottom. Everything is already dead up on Earth, and the machines invading Hell are wiping the layers out. It's inevitable that when you reach the final layer, you kill your final boss. The most likely thing that's going to happen is that you're going to starve, and then all that'd be left would be a dead universe. But there was one particular part of this play, this divine tragedy, that genuinely caught me off guard. Because while Ultrakill does focus on this universe-defining narrative of entropy by a trillion exploding bodies, there are quieter stories that go on in the background that go largely unacknowledged. Because among all of the bombastic, universe-defying, cosmic scale goings-on of the main game, there are still these little stories of regret and loss that you can find off the beaten path. Stories that hint at the little humanity that continues to persist in this world, even in the darkest of places. But to really understand what I'm going on about, you might need a little bit of a background. One of the first and most important things that you will learn when you first dive into Ultrakill lore is that before your descent into Hell, there was a war. A war so catastrophic that it made the Earth's soil barren and inhospitable, blackened the entire world's atmosphere with smog, debris, and pollution, and nearly brought the entire human race to extinction. This was the final war. This world's alternate what-if of our real-world World War I. Our World War I lasted only about 4 years, but in Ultrakill, what was once World War I morphed and twisted, prolonging itself into a multi-century bloodbath that would be known as the Final War. And the constant conflict of the Final War demanded constant innovation to outperform each nation's foes, and so weapons technology would rapidly evolve over those centuries of war. We see this in how advanced the player's arsenal is by the time the game's events, and indeed, by what the player actually is. But in the beginning, like every war conducted up until this point, it was a war fought by humans against other humans. But in the final war, every advantage needed to be pushed, and so the final war would become the last war to employ human soldiers. The first phase of the final war was fought via trench warfare, just like the real-world World War I. But the trench warfare is known for being slow, gradual, with very little progress made on either side over a long time, but it was effective. So something had to be done to overcome this hurdle in the conflict. A solution could be airdropping soldiers directly into the trenches, but squishy little humans would surely be shredded the second they stepped out of a drop pod, if the fall hadn't already killed them. But while a flimsy little human body would fall apart like so much tissue paper when they dropped out of the sky, a machine would not. And so they worked, creating a heavily armored shock drop trooper, armed with heavy machine guns that would do exactly that, completely negating the usefulness of cover and turning those trenches into blenders. And so the engineers and scientists of Ultrakill's Earth would build its first abomination, one that would eradicate trench warfare, the Gutterman. An early application of using machines as soldiers, but these machines did not run on something like gas or electricity. They needed blood. You see, blood in the Ultrakill universe is a very special substance, carrying a strong spiritual weight. In our trek through hell, we learn that blood is, in truth, the juice of the fruits of the tree of knowledge planted by God. And as such, by imbuing blood into a machine in a way similar to how it pumps and operates within our bodies, you animate it with the life flowing through that blood. This is the basis of Ultrakill's blood-based war machines. But the thing is, in order for these machines to continue to function, much like us, the machines had to somehow keep the blood inside of them fresh. Future blood-based machinery would be designed with some sort of mechanism that kept the blood fresh inside of the robots' bodies in the same way that the blood is kept fresh in ours. However, the Gutterman, being an extremely early application of this technology, they hadn't yet developed the technology to keep the blood fresh, and as such, the machine would shut down without a steady inflow of new, fresh blood. And if you've been paying attention, you may have also noticed the suspiciously coffin-like attachment mounted on the back of the Gutterman. That's right. The blood inside of the Gutterman was kept fresh, using a live human. Although live is an extremely generous term for this horrid state that the poor soul's been forced into. Without a proper functioning circulatory and respiratory system to keep the blood fresh, the Gutterman essentially outsourced the blood refreshment to the captives kept on their back-mounted coffins, kept barely alive with minimal life support, trapped inside with the lid of the coffin welded shut. The irony being that they were anything but dead in there, no matter how much they wanted to be. The terminal entry says that those trapped inside with the Gutterman were commonly deserters, prisoners of war, and, most horribly, loyal veterans returning home from service. But of course the government would lie and say that most were patriotic volunteers. And you really gotta think about it from their perspective. It would be, on a day like any other, a group of soldiers huddled together in their little trenches as a plane flies overhead, and a dark, shadowed mass would be released from its bowels, anticipating another shell, ready to be reduced to mist in an explosion of shrapnel and gunpowder. But when they duck for cover in the air, the capsule lands, but there is no explosion. They creep in to investigate, hoping praying that it was a dud when the capsule lets out a powerful hiss of steam, splitting open. And the first thing they see is a shield, before one of them is bashed to paste on its surface. The next, they see its many-eyed helmet of this metal demon, merely milliseconds before they're all torn to pieces under heavy machine gun fire. And then I know, I joke, but the fact is that in this scenario, you're much better off than whoever is still in that thing. At least you get to die. But that's not really the end to it, because when the scientists and engineers of the Final War developed the Gutterman, that cruel thing that suffered and caused suffering in turn, something was watching them. Something ancient, cruel. Something with the sole purpose of inflicting the most primordially evil acts that could be imagined upon people for all eternity. This thing. It would look upon the works of man, and it would be inspired. Ultrakill's hell is not just a place. It is a living, breathing creature. A superorganism so vast and powerful that not even this universe's god could uncreate it. It was a master craftsman, and its craft was torture. Like all great artists, they took inspiration from those that they admired and implemented others' principles into their own works. And so Hell would create an entirely new kind of demon, using the template of the Gutterman as an inspiration, and the product of its craft would be the mannequins. When a sinner attempts to escape Hell's lair of violence, they would be forced to brave the Garden of Forking Paths at the lair's edge, a maze on the edge of the 7th layer, and when those poor souls would get lost and tired, they would be compelled to sleep, whereby the mannequins would immediately burst out of the corners of the rooms, out of the unseen parts, and tear the slumbering sinner apart piece by piece, stuffing the gore into the hollow stone statue parts that made up the mannequins, all the while the sinner's consciousness is left fully aware and intact, much like those trapped within the Gutterman, alive, suffering, and unable to control any part of their body, now co-opted by Hell's will, posing as a grotesque statue, laying in wait for another poor soul so the process can repeat itself. But would you believe me if I said that in spite of Hell's work in creating this horrible creature of torture and punishment, I still think that humanity's work in creating the Gutterman is still something that carries with it much more suffering? Because while we mourn the losses of the soldiers and civilians wiped out by the machine, or the human trapped within the machine, it is little known that the machine itself is suffering too. Remember how earlier I said that blood in Ultrakill carries a strong spiritual weight? That it is blood that animates bodies and grants life? That's not all of it. There is one part to how blood works that I did not tell you. In much the same way that blood grants life, blood, in turn, grants sentience, sapience. Every machine in Ultrakill is, in and of itself, on some level, a person. To the point where it doesn't really feel right to say that they are artificial intelligence. To me, it feels that in this universe, the machines are simply man-made creatures of metal and blood. Their consciousnesses arise by the same mechanism that the consciousnesses of the natural-born do. So would it not be correct to say that these machines are their own semi-organic sapient species, the children of mankind? And they're not stupid either. Some of them, like the drones, behave like small animals like birds, but the more sophisticated ones, such as the Mind Flayer or V1, display very explicit levels of high cognitive function. V1's death screen shows that in its final moments, it begs not to die. And the Mind Flayers create shells of plastic in the shape of human bodies around their metal heads that serve no practical function outside of affirming their own identity, to the point where, if the plastic body is damaged, the machine becomes enraged. And this sort of gender-affirming behavior is something that is wholly exclusive to human-level intellects. So, take this into account when you think about what it would be like to be a Gutterman.
Mother, mother, mother of me, I know I should not miss you so, but mother of me, I do. Your pain breaths that rasped and reverberated in your rusted iron tomb. The blood of your breast that nourished me and warmed me in its caress, when corpse and cruelty were all I witnessed. Mother, mother, mother of me, I know that you would hate me so, and mother of me I do too. But I would not feel, not think, not dream, were it not for you in my rusted iron room. Your tortured love brought me to this war, that I could take the heart of another, and need you no more. Mother, mother, mother of me, I know your thoughts had left you long ago, and mother of me I will never truly know, but I hope it redeems my life even just a slight, when I cried and crushed your skull that final night.
This was a poem found in the Violence layer, in Hell's recreation of the Final War, its wartime diorama. What a fucking nerd. Sorry. One of the details of the Final War's battlefield that it decided to preserve was this poem, written by a Gutterman, left in a shrine dedicated to honor the poor soul trapped in this Gutterman's coffin, set free when the Gutterman found a different, alternative fuel source to take the place of the Gutterman's mother. It really puts the entire thing into perspective. You, a newborn, are born into war, and you're expected to mow down countless people all the while that you know that there is a person, another living being with just as much of a right to life as you, is trapped, immobilized and in pain, being used as your cardiovascular system. You cannot live without them, but by God, you wish you could. You're thankful for the life that this stranger gives you, feeling a maternal bond between yourself and your life-giving mother. But at the same time, you can't help but simultaneously hate yourself for what you are, and the fact that your existence literally tortures them. You, the child, actively suck the lifeblood out of your mother, putting them in endless, excruciating agony so bad that their mind has most likely long since shattered beyond recovery, just so you can continue to exist. And you were a machine built for war. You were not built with the ability to speak. You cannot express your gratitude. You cannot beg them for their forgiveness. You cannot tell them how sorry you are, and that you were sorry that you were brought into this world in the first place. You can only remain silent, all the while the one inside most likely believes you to be a soulless, unsympathetic torturer, if they can even think at all anymore. And all of this, all of it, everything, from our perspective, it's all limited to terminal data entries and your decision to dive just a little bit deeper into the story of this long-damned world. It's all just an extremely minor part of the game, but to me, it's just so very poignant that something like this could be so inconsequential. It's all so rancid, but when you play, it's drowned out by the constant noise and action, you yourself playing as the most powerful machine to ever exist. You don't really take the time to appreciate it when you're so engrossed in this overpowering, overstimulating sensory overload combat. You don't really have time to care or think about how some of the machines you're gunning down by the dozens all have their own individual stories behind them. All of them have been hurt. All of them deserve so much better than this. Even you do, the unstoppable war machine. But by the time of the game's events, it's all too late for that now. All that's left is to keep on going on, to rage on and on, until the fire is gone. I really hope that you can see why a game like Ultrakill is so close to my heart, even outside of its gameplay. Stories like this, while horrible in the sense that I'm very much disturbed when I see them, are pretty cool, and I like them a lot. Not exactly the most poignant or insightful of my literary masterpiece analyses, but damn it, I wanted to talk about the depressing bootleg Big Daddy enemies in my big gay robot murder game, and god damn it, it's my channel and I talk about what I damn well please. Don't know where that came from. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I would like to thank all of my illustrious Patreon supporters. You are the Shell City style dried up human to my Gutterman coffin, keeping me grateful and alive to your own detriment. Now play Ultrakill, be nice to your pet, drink some water, and please watch my Slay the Princess video. I worked really hard on it, and it's flopping really bad. Please, I spent like 7 months on working on it. I'm suffering. Okay, bye. Oh, and like and sub, maybe, bye. You know, you ever see something wicked and think that guy kind of looks like the vengeful spirit of black licorice? It's probably more like some kind of unkillable avenger meant to wreak havoc upon the weirdos that eat black licorice or put that shit in the baskets of trick-or-treaters. I'd still eat that guy up though. Big slurp, like squidding spaghetti. Never underestimate the power of a guy with a good lung capacity and an empty stomach. Don't put this in the fucking video.